panelists here tonight and give you a sense of who's up here, and to say thank you to each of them for joining us for tonight's presentation. Immediately to my left here is Dr. Jimmie Reeves. Dr. Reeves is an associate professor here in the College of Media and Communication. He is one of our sponsors for the film series, for which we are very grateful. He teaches courses in visual communication, intro to electronic media, writing for series television, analyzing television, understanding video games, and writing for feature film, among some others. And his research areas include television criticism and, more recently, video game theory. And he is a valued member, valued colleague here in my Department of Journalism and Electronic Media. Next to him is Mernhaz Rahimi, who is a doctoral student here in the College of Media and Communication. Her research is focused on depictions of countries, ethnicities, or political and social figures, especially in the Middle East, made by media, particularly the U.S. media, online social networking and its impacts on social movements, and the internet and its impacts on printed media. She hails from Iran and has experience as a translator, interpreter at the Australian Embassy in Tehran. And we are very pleased to have her here for the second time this semester. So she's putting in double duty for us this year. So welcome back.
Thank you.
And finally, Future Akins-Tillett is an associate professor in the School of Art. Is it
School of Art.
Okay. She has a Master of Fine Arts degree in printmaking and is the coordinator of the Master of Art Education program. She taught at the university level for 11 years, following 4 years as a public school art teacher, 7 years as a caregiver for her father, and 8 years working in museums. She's a practicing artist working with textiles and printmaking, and has given presentations in Puebla, Mexico, Edinburgh, Scotland, Ponce, Puerto Rico, as well as presentations at conferences, NAEA conferences, International Fine Arts Dean conferences, and several others. And we are very pleased to have her here. And she will lead us off tonight, because alphabetically she goes first. We'll allow each of our panelists to speak for a few minutes on the film, and then open it up for Q&A after that.
Okay, thank you. I actually said I'd like to go first, because I've never been here before. So I thought I would just give my impression as an artist to the film, because that's what I was sort of asked to do. So my first impression is it was an absolutely beautiful film. I loved the use of color, especially in moody times. I just thought it was wonderful. I was taken back slightly at the lack of music. Music was only at the beginning and at the end. Great jazz, though. Fusion jazz. Was that not cool? I was like, whoa, I want the soundtrack, but there is no soundtrack. And then there was no special effects. I thought of all the films I've seen in the last 2 years, something's always blowing up or being thrown at me or something. And there was none of that. So I was so impressed that it was really just acting. And I went, whoa. From the first time, I loved the opening credits. And what a gorgeous graphic it was. That the use of the lettering is just beautiful. And so those things were the ones that I came away with going, I love the actors, I love the characters. It reminded me of the whole story, and this will totally date me, reminded me of one of the really good Bob Dylan songs, because you kind of think you know where you're going, but you don't have any clue, and there's always a mystery to it. And so I love that about any medium, is that you're given some information, but not all the information. It's not spelled out. And I'm so excited to be on the panel with you all, because I had a couple of things. I know enough to know I don't know anything. And like, there's got to be something to the cigarette flickering. There's just got to be some symbolism to lighting the cigarette. I was like, that's in there too much. I wasn't sure why the helicopters were in, and then there was thunder at the end. But I thought, okay, that's got to mean something. I have no clue what it means. And I think that's probably the main things that haunted me about it was, and that I enjoyed about it, was not having all the answers. I fell in love with the dialogue. That would be the other thing. absolutely loved the dialogue. Felt like part of it needed a lot of counseling. I was like, okay, these two are two sickos, you know. But at the same time, I was like, remember that they're going to be symbolic of something else. This isn't a slice of a true life. This means more. So I'm going to leave that. Those are my first impressions.
Great. Okay. First, when I saw the movie, there were several questions in my mind, and I can show you my notes that I wrote all of them because it was so ambiguous for me. And I had a search, and it seems that the director likes this style, that he doesn't like to give information to the audience, and he wants to keep them in a kind of ambiguous atmosphere. And at the beginning, if you look at the names of the director or actors, it was, in English it was okay, but in Farsi it wasn't in the right direction. I mean, it was difficult to read them. And it seems that the director wanted to make the movie about the classes of society and how the upper class kind of humiliated the lower class. And the idea of making the movie formed in director's mind. Director is Kaveh, his Mani Haqiqi, the man who was playing the first role. And he's saying that the idea was formed in my mind when I was talking to Abbas Kiarostami, who is a famous who is a famous director of documentary movies, about 1992, and I was wondering what will happen if we give a bag of money to poor people, and especially those who are earthquake-stricken, because in 1990 there was a huge earthquake in Iran, and he had about 35,000 people died, and so many lost their homes. So he had it in his mind that what will happen if we give a bag of money? Do they accept it? And as we saw in the movie, not all of the people will get it. In contrast to what we may think, and so something else. The last the last scenes, you saw the biscuits that they offered to the couples. It was written the modest reception that's the movie's name. So it was in Persian on the box of the biscuits or cookies.
Oh, really? Said that on there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the brand
Isn't that
name.
cool?
The modest reception.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the brand name. And yes, it's one of them because so far I don't say it's good or bad, but I have watched some Iranian movies in global lens. Not all of them were screened in Iran, but this one was screened. Although it didn't have a good box office, not so many audiences, and the director said it's because of the Islamic Development Organization that did some kind of negative advertising against the movie. Because they accused the director of criticizing the government. It's made in 2010, and in that year or the previous year, the government implemented a new economic plan. It's called targeting the subsidies. They removed subsidies from the goods and products, and they started giving money to people in cash. So they said he's criticizing the government because of this plan, But he said, no, I'm not. I didn't have this kind of intention, although you can have your own interpretation. Yes, this is what I can say. I have, yeah.
Okay, I have a few handouts. I don't know if I have enough for
He
everyone.
came prepared. Not fair.
That's because I'd say 80% of the people here are my students.
Okay.
They're graphing have their horizons collectively expanded. I think that I'd like to address just a couple of things. Number one, the whole idea of ambiguity is important, and I think it's something. And if you've been one of my students and come to a previous movie, you're going to hear some of the things that I've said before. But I think it's important to kind of give you an idea about why I think Global Lens is so important, and why I encourage you, by making 10% of your grade worth coming to these things, to come to class, to come to at least one viewing, in hopes that maybe you might come to others, right? But on your own. So far, my hopes have been dashed, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe some of you will check out other ones that's not a matter of a class requirement. I think it's really important for most American students to understand that these are have a different. I guess you would say motivation than what the kind of movies that you're used to. The type of movies that you're used to are commercial films made by a Hollywood industry that's been in place for a long time, and they're devoted to making money. And the way they make money is to provide you with a pleasure trip, right? And that pleasure trip generally works this way. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and at the end there's this resolution, and all of the fun, all of the tension, all of the scary stuff that happens in the beginning and middle are resolved at the end, and basically you leave the movie. When you leave the movie, you leave the story behind, right? You remember the story and everything, but you're not asked to continue to think about that story after you leave. So let's call that the cinema of pleasure, the cinema of that's sort of devoted to giving people a pleasure trip, so that they'll come back over and over again because of the enjoyment of that experience. But at the same time, they're not movies that's meant to change your life. Right? They're not movies that are meant to make you think after you leave the movie theater. All right? This is an example, and this is typical of independently produced films. It's also typical of films that are in the festival circuit, like Sundance. This, what I've given you is a review that appeared in the Hollywood Reporter of the Berlin Film Festival, and this is a review, kind of a synopsis from the Berlin Film Festival showing of this film. These filmmakers generally have different motivations. They have to make some kind of money, right? Or they have to have you've got to figure out a way to continue to make movies, or you'll only make one, right? But the main thing they're out to do is to accomplish something that I think every artist wants to do, and that's to make the familiar strange, and to make you rethink your lives and your values and what the world is about. Okay, And I would call that the cinema of contemplation, right? You go there, you go through this journey. It's a trip, right? But it's not necessarily meant to be completely about pleasure. It's also about contemplation, about deep thinking, about such things as the meaning of life, right? And the meaning of money and economic differences and cultural differences and all those things. And I think it's pretty clear if you look at this movie that he's it starts off as sort of a crazy comedy, and it takes this, it continually gets darker and darker and darker, and I think where you reach the darkest point probably is at the cemetery with the George Clooney-like guy who's the director of the film, laying down beside the baby's corpse, and it still gets even a little darker. I think with you fear for the young woman's life when the motorcycles are circling and that sort of thing. So you have this journey from light to darkness, and then light again. I mean, it ends on a weird thing. I don't know what to make of the ending, to be honest with you. And I'm anxious to see if any of you have interesting interpretations of why they chose to end on the sort of delayed mercy killing of the mule. But it was an ending that didn't provide closure. Just an ending, right? It didn't really answer a lot of the questions that the film raises about what is the price that you'd pay for your baby's body? For me, probably the most thought-provoking and interesting and well-written moment in that was the scene between the two brothers and the sister's or the young woman's reaction to his taking the money away from one, giving it to another, and then making him swear he won't share it with his brother. I mean, that's really some interesting enigmas that are raised and some problems that are worth contemplation, right? So that's my take on what's going on in this film, and it's the kind of film where I hope that at least a few of you will talk about it later and say, what's going on? Why do they end with a mule or what? That sort of thing. But the answers aren't presented for you. You have to tease them out, right? I mean, they're asking you to think through this. Why did they end on the mule? Your answer may be as well as it might be not might be, but I mean the answer that you come up with is the one that certainly speaks to your own values, beliefs, and it's sort of like a Rorschach test, right? You have this pattern, and the meaning of the ending tells us more about you than it does about the film in some ways, right? And I'd like to just talk very briefly about my experience, limited experience, but because of the global lens, and one of the reasons that I love the global lens is that it's opened up this new cinema for me, and that's the Iranian cinema. It's an amazing community of filmmakers in Iran. Some of the best movies that I've seen in the last 10 years have been movies that have been in the global lens from this. And I'm not sure that this would rank right at the top of them, but it's a good movie. It's a worthy movie. But there have been other movies that have been on the program that have just been amazing. And because of this, I've sort of I would count myself not as an expert of Iranian filmmaking, but as an admirer of it. I just think it's an incredible national cinema, and especially when you consider the political and sort of climate that they operate, that these filmmakers are operating under. In some ways, that may be why it's such a great cinema. I mean, that it's cinema that matters, and they're taking risks, real risks, with the movies that they make. It's a cinema that's been around for a while. The director who was one of the co-stars in this film, and I'm terrible with the names. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to go by their first names. Actually, Mani, you see his picture up here. He's third generation in this movie community. His father was a well-known cinematographer and celebrated cinematographer too. And you'll see. Thank you for correcting me. But his father's was. This is at his funeral, and it's not the man holding the photograph, but the man, you just see his nose sticking out there. That's Mani's father. And who's holding the photograph?
Abbas Kiarostami.
Oh, this man. Okay. So so we have two nice pictures of Abbas here. Abbas Kiarostami. All right. Abbas Kiarostami is the one, as you mentioned, who gave Mani the idea. And I don't know how much of the sort of scenarios he contributed, but just basically the premise of the story,
yes,
right?
Yes, I think just the idea.
Just the idea, and Kiarostami has made over 40 movies. He's one of the leading figures, maybe the leading figure in Iranian film. Would you say?
He has his special style.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So he's very well known.
Yeah.
You guys have heard of him, right? Obviously, right? Okay. And his grandfather is Ibrahim Golestan, and I don't know if he's still alive, but he's been around for a long time.
I don't know.
And he's so you have a father involved in the movies, grandfather who certainly had to be involved very early on in the movies, and then so we've got a third generation. The other connection you should know is that Mani has collaborated with probably the most well-known outside of Iran filmmaker. He won the Academy Award last year for Separation, and Mani has starred in one of his films. I think it was
About Ellie.
About Ellie, and he also, I think, helped write. Was a writer on the Fireworks. Is it Fireworks Friday or
Wednesday?
Fireworks Wednesday, which are another films by Farhadi. So this gives you an idea of just how tight that community is. I mean, we're seeing someone who's a third generation filmmaker, but he's also worked with Farhadi, and there's certainly a lot of. It must be just a wonderful creative place to try and do movies and have these sort of interactions with other filmmakers. The final person I should mention is Amani's mother, Leela Golestan, who's a noted artist, and she owns one of the biggest art galleries in Tehran, right? Tehran, right?
Yeah, Tehran.
And so we have someone here who's got a pedigree in terms of art in Iran, but also is involved in this really vibrant community. I think that when I was doing a search on some of these names today, I noticed that there was that there was something that said Iranian film on Netflix, and I haven't really looked into that, but it might be interesting if you want to really see some thought-provoking movies that are of high artistic quality, then I would suggest that you search these names, maybe in Netflix, or does anyone know if any of the Farhadi's movies are on there now? I don't know. Is Separation on there? I don't know, but I promise you, it's worth watching, spending some time and watching these movies than watching the 10th installment of some sequel, long-standing sequel in Hollywood. You're going to get more out of it. You're going to have something that will make you think. And I know it hurts when you first try doing that, but after a while it kind of gets to be pleasurable. So this is an appeal to think of movies as not just something that you go to, you have fun, and you leave behind, but it's an invitation to come and see these global lens films, and also take this, go home devote one night to watching an international film, and I think it will be not only a horizon expanding experience, but it'll be a life enriching experience to do that. Okay, that's it. I'm an evangelist.
No,
I
thought of one other thing when you both were speaking. One of the joys I have is I help young men and women become public school teachers. And one semester I had an incredible woman who had come from absolute poverty. She got her clothes at the stores where you buy the clothes by the pound. And we were talking about things, and I had a number of privileged kids in the class, and she finally had just had enough one day, and she said, "Take your goodwill and go home." She said, "You do not know how embarrassing it is or how rude it is to come in briefly, offer us things, and then leave. Leave us alone. Unless you're going to stay and live there, go away." And this film reminds me of that. That the assumption that I'm giving you $1 million, aren't you happy? I'm doing a good deed, doesn't solve any problems. None of the problems were solved by the $1 million. And what she had told us that day in class haunted me, and this film haunts me the same way, is that the assumption, no matter what our background is, we're all sitting in a beautiful room, we're going to college, we're involved in college, and so we're privileged in a sense. And that poverty, unless you've lived it, you just don't know it. And that's what the film said to me, was, and I couldn't help make, because of my upbringing, stories that related to stories out of the Bible, the Old Testament, pitting a brother against a brother, saying, what is it really worth? What am I trading for? And putting the main person at odds with their moral character. Like, what is the cost? Okay? How much is it for you to sell your soul? And so those are the things that when you were talking about the beauty of films like this, that reminded me, that came back to me from just experience. So, do you guys have questions? Surely you do.
I thought that the old man was most of my favorite character, because he allowed his humility from his faith to really govern his choice of taking the money or keeping it, or his choice concerning the money. And I think that it goes back to what you were saying about how, if you're not going to stay, then what's the point? What's the point of this free will? Or not this goodwill, sorry. And I thought that was really, another word for it, I thought it was just really admirable to see that that was such a pivotal character.
Mhm.
The entire film.
So too.
He had he really had a way of seeming not to even think that the camera's there. I mean, he was obviously, I think he was an amateur actor. I don't know for
No,
sure,
not
but
that much.
he
Not
wasn't.
that much.
Okay, he's been in other movies.
He has been to other movies, but
Yeah.
not the main character.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But that was a great performance. I
Yeah, but
think.
good actors, you don't think they're acting.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, even in Hollywood, they do a new part and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't the person I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that's why we admire great acting,
Yeah.
is that they transport us to whatever they're dealing with in their dialogue.
Yeah.
You know,
What do you think of the two main characters' journeys? I mean, this experience really takes them in different directions. I think. I think it takes the man down a pretty sinister path, and I think it takes the woman sort of from being takes a very different path. Of course, it's different. It's difficult to tell because they're acting. They're acting at the stop. They're acting. She's acting when she's trying to give the money to the. But at a certain point, the man really becomes a provocateur. I mean, he becomes. He does things that are not just about giving the money away, but about messing with people's lives. And, yeah.
When he got to the cemetery, his whole role changed to something more diabolical than it started out.
I'm sorry. When was that?
I said his role, cemetery.
Okay. Yeah.
Cemetery, that's where everything started. It started to change when he took the money from the brothers.
Uh-huh.
His role spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And for the girl, her the most important part for her in the film for me was she's a shock mule. Because in the scene before when she was pitying the mule because she was a vet, it showed that the whole process of giving alms to toll on her, the guy's character of being violent, when he hit her, that just, there was too many in class who were talking about violence against women, and what was the thing we were talking about?
About an Eminem video, actually. Domestic violence and violence against women.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Domestic violence against women, and I think the moment he hit her, that's when things changed for her. She took off and she went by herself.
Yeah.
That's just how the whole thing played out.
So, did you think she really was a vet? In your mind, is she a
In my
vet?
mind, yeah.
Okay. See, I thought that was part of the con.
Yeah.
Oh, a mule! Come on, you guys are from the city. A mule is
Asexual. They can't.
asexual. They
reproduce.
can't have children. They can't have babies. So there's no. When she says there's a baby in here, it's really funny if you know that.
Yeah.
That came back to her.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I mean, I love what you said, but part of what I love about the film is I have no idea where the truth is. I know they talked to somebody on the phone, but I have no idea what part of their story was true, what their relationship was or wasn't. And that's what I loved about it, is that they were two. I thought they were two con artists who got trapped in their own mini play. And when they started interacting with real people, that's when they lost control.
Yeah, that's what he said. The director said, I don't want to give information, and he wanted to focus just on how to tease other people, to tease those who are in a lower class. And in the graveyard or cemetery, he's saying the director said, I wanted to make the scene like the teacher kills his baby because of the money, but I was scared that I may lose the audience, so I changed it like that. And he's saying when you humiliate somebody, you are humiliated more than that person, and that's the part he's saying. That's the part you can see in the director's face, that he didn't like to be the winner in that case.
So was there, this, I'm really curious, was there a script? To me, it seemed like there wasn't a script. It was like, okay, act crazy, react to her craziness. I mean, it seemed to me more like a Fellini, I'm really dating myself now, a Fellini film, which is Bonkers City, where you're just given like, act this way, over here, now walk over here and act that way. Did they have actual scripts? Does anybody know? Actual scripts?
I think it's scripted. I mean, there's a lot of things that, like a lot of things happen off camera that I think indicate that it's scripted. Like what does she do when she goes back up to see the animal? I mean, we get the answer, I guess, when they come back in does the mule disappear?
Yeah,
the mule disappears. But even more importantly, and I think this is, in some ways, I'm thinking that this is really a moment where they part directions. It's when she goes into behind the plastic in the where the man was digging the gravel, and she's in there a long time, and she comes out and says, "She's beautiful. You now have my." Was there really a woman in there? Did she just say that to make him leave the guy alone? That was an interesting, I think. We don't know. We don't know.
See, I think that's what is the beauty of this film, is that I could be suspended and say, they're just talking. These are just people talking, And I didn't feel like, I knew very quickly I had no clue where we were going. This was going to be a fun ride. I had no clue how dark it would get or how light it would get. Mm-hmm. But I have to ask you, is there a symbolism to not being able to light a light? A historical symbolism?
That it doesn't work?
That the light doesn't work. This has to be. Yeah, it didn't. It always worked for her and it never worked for him.
What I kind of perceived from that was that it was a way of representing, is it Layla?
Layla.
It was a way of representing her importance in the relationship. Because she did say when they were in the coffee shop, I'll always be here. And she was the only one able to work.
But then he got matches. See, so he could have his cigarettes, and other people use the lighter. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a...
I was sure there was some symbolism to that.
I think it may be...
I just kept thinking, isn't this ridiculous? They have piles of money in the back, and they can't afford a lighter.
Maybe that's a great point, yeah.
You had your hand up.
But he does have the lighter, and I interpret his inability to light the lighter as a symbol of his incompetence. He cannot carry out his plan. He's not able to do it.
Come on, babe.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, there's something going on with there, and I think it's connected with, maybe it's bigger than the lighter, maybe it's fire. Because it does go, he does light the, he uses the match to light the
And he said
fire.
he had gasoline. There were a lot of things. I went, wait a minute, where did the gasoline come from?
No, it wasn't gasoline. It was the beverage that
Oh,
he
the
got
beverage,
from
okay.
Yeah,
from the
I
guy.
think it was a
The
whiskey.
White Lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
I'll do it. That was fun. You had something else?
I was just thinking, light represents hope. Just growing up. Just the fact that he could operate light means he had hope. Hope for him was Katie, but for her, she still had hope. She still had something going on. She hasn't lost herself. He's lost himself as yet. So
Great.
maybe that was the reason.
I guess I asked it. I used to watch a lot of German films. There used to be a foreign film series in Lubbock. You go to the movie theater on Tuesday night, and it'd be foreign films. And in the German films, there was always a scene of women carrying bricks. I was like, what is this deal with eels and women carrying bricks? Until I talked to someone, and they said, oh, that little clip always represents rebuilding after the war. Because it literally were the workers who would walk home and carry a brick a day. And that's how you rebuild. And so I didn't know if this was something particular to a country that's been in war forever and is trying to rebuild, trying to see the hope or the light. You know, there was a part of my jaded imagery that represented this couple in a sense, even though I come from a military background and all, represented any organization or group that goes into another country and tries to give away money, and they do it a million wrong ways. It's like every time they went to give the money away, it was wrong for another reason. They never got it right. They either turned someone into a liar, or made a brother go against a brother, or they had these kids that were fighting, they were giving them the wrong answers, and I was like, whoa, what a lesson in how many ways can you do it wrong. Your intention's right, but your actions are wrong. And that's, you know, was one of the things I kept saying. I was like, you still haven't gotten it right. Most people get it right on the second try. They really do. They learn how to give money away.
What do you make of the guy with the Cardinals hoodie? He ends up getting killed. Did you pick up on that? I mean, he was murdered, I guess, when he stabbed when he went over the line. Anybody have anything to say about him? Should I point out names? You want to try it? No.
I think it's ironic because he was like the only guy that actually like accepted the money. Was like
What's that?
he was like the only one that didn't have a fight about the money, like taking the money and then talking about his ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't the women in here find him sleazy?
I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, stalking around a bathroom and calling her honey. I'm sorry, that's inappropriate. You know, if I saw someone outside the bathroom door and started calling me honey.
I didn't really understand why she was so willing that he gave up the car either, because he wasn't really threatening in any way. He was just asking for it, and she just very easily got out of the car.
I felt like every word he said was a threat.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you waiting
He's
for her to
very,
get
very
Yeah.
peripheral, very selfish.
In that condition, no. I think that was more threatening than, you know, being so aggressive.
If you're a woman surrounded by 50 odds and strange men in the middle of the night, in the middle
On
of
motorcycles?
I will do whatever you want. Yeah.
So at that time when he asked for the car, all you guys did that.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, it was just him at that point,
Yeah.
and she had that gun, or there was a gun in the glove box still.
No,
No, the gun was gone.
He had it at the graveyard.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay,
It's his
but
tone that you use, because threats don't have to be loud. You know, it was a tone, and she was threatened by him from the beginning.
Yeah.
When he stepped out of the bathroom. So he already put that in her mind that he's threatened. And he just talked to her normally, and she just gave him the car. She was already scared.
Yeah, he shows up with a motorcycle game to take all the money. He wasn't a nice guy. I mean, of all the characters, he was the least appealing. And as a female, very, very threatening. Very threatening. Especially because the way he talked, which was gentle, but nasty. I was like, yeah. So I'm curious, just because I come at this from an artist's point of view. Did you guys like the music too? Did you?
What little bit was, yeah.
Yeah. And did you see the subtle changes of color in the filmmaking? I mean, and her use of her red scarf. I mean, there were just these wonderful, beautiful little things they did. Because it was basically a gray movie. And then the mule, whatever mules were, that was red. There were just these beautiful little pieces of color, like jewels, in this snowy, gray, muddy field. You know.
I was struck by you had this sort of primitive rock buildings, this plastic, you know, it's,
Everywhere.
plastics everywhere, you know, and what is that typical or?
No, it's showing that it was a kind of deprived area that they didn't, you know, they were poor, they didn't have money to, you know, put something else. Yeah, it's, yeah, in the deprived areas, I think that's what you see. And, you know, I had another problem with the time frame that they were talking about, because I mentioned that in some cases they said that they landed, were bombarded, or they will come and bomb on our head, and
Mines, right?
and also mines,
Yeah.
because there was a war in Iran for 8 years. I think it was during 1980s with Iraq. So and the
But
area,
there's the other border they were on.
yeah,
right?
the area is Kurdistan, which is which has border with Iraq. But I mean, because of the car, it's showing that it has been you know, made recently, not during that time. But you know, what they say is.
Then why were there helicopters?
I think it was just
But was it either, okay, they suddenly flew into our filming and we don't have the money to refilm it, which could happen. It's not a high budget film.
it could be said that like the helicopters and the thunder at the end was kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be said and argued that it was in some ways God's vigilance, watching over them as they work, as they do these things, and he's like, I'm watching you, and eventually this all catches up with it.
Yeah, I just took it very literally, but the other thing that I thought was amazing, which shows my ignorance of the world, in many ways it could have been filmed anywhere. Aside from the language, because I was reading it anyway, it could have been filmed anywhere that was poverty.
Yeah.
And that was one of the beauties of the film. One of my travels, I've been to Jamaica, up by the outside of Montego Bay, way up outside. It could have been there if it didn't have all the snow.
I don't know.
You don't agree?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm from Jamaica.
Oh, wow. Where are you from?
Houston.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's different than the mountains, but yeah.
Bay is actually the more successful side of it.
Uh-huh.
The way that's the east.
Yeah.
When the east side of it, see something different. They're not trees. We don't have mountains at all.
This was up in the mountains above Montego Bay, way up, living in small little, yeah. Yeah, but I agree. I stand corrected. I won't use Jamaica.
That's it with me.
I have a question for you, Mernhaz, and that is regarding the language, particularly at the beginning. There was some heavy cussing,
Yes.
and I'm just wondering, like, how does that fit in the context of, censorship in Iran, and would that be, I mean, it seems to me like that would be problematic. It was pretty strong language, at least in the translation and the subtitle.
Yes, that's right. And one of the things that because I had internet search, and one of the things that they mention is it's the heavy use of F words in the movie, which is, I cannot say it's not common. It's not common when it is shown on TV, but when it's on a screen in cinema, it's something else. They're they're more free to use them. It's okay, but it was one of the criticism toward the movie that they use so many F words and that kind of things. I have watched I like movies, but it had a lot.
I didn't notice any, because I'm so used to American movies.
But you're reading it in the context of
Yeah.
Cultural production in a place like Iran.
Yes, and so I was watching it and I said, "Oh my God, what they are saying?" It wasn't appropriate.
See, I just went by.
And I found the tension between the city dwellers and the rural population really interesting. I think it was not just geographic in that sense, but also sort of economic and cultural.
That's right. Yeah.
And the people in the rural areas seemed to be really deferent, in a way that almost wasn't believable. Like they didn't seem to be as suspicious or I don't know, just resentful of the presence of these people coming in this fancy car with nice clothes and bags of money as one might imagine.
Yes, you're right, because they should be, suspicious because, okay, they know who are the people living in that area, and when they see somebody who is new, they will become suspicious. You're right, but we didn't see that.
With respect to the relationship between the wealthy and the poor, one of the things that I encountered in the third world is that people who are peasants living out in the country who have their whole lives out there, they don't relate to ideas like here's $1 million, so what are you going to do with it? It's beyond their comprehension. And it represents, if they do begin to comprehend, it represents such a whole change in life that they really can't do. And so, one of the things I'm thinking of, say this is, when I was a graduate student, I was in the highlands of Colombia, for people who were living in mud shacks, growing potatoes in the rolling fields, and you look down and hear these nice sanders that wheat, and you just say, well, would you like to live down there? And perhaps you like to get to bed. And I think a lot of that is what's coming through the film when the wealthy city dwellers are interacting, especially true of the old man at the beginning, the first scene, where he just can't comprehend. So, no, I don't want that.
Or the truck driver who gets the money and still thinks he's got to finish his work, and the main character said, "You don't get it," and it was exactly the other way around.
See, I actually thought of them as the prophets, the really brilliant ones, who were like, "This is where I live. This is how I live. Your money doesn't matter in my world. Yes, I live here, but it's all I need. Or yes, I'm going to finish the job. Why wouldn't I finish the job? I, as a human, as a man of principle, a woman of principle, said, I'm going to finish the job today." I thought they became the admirable people, the ones who were content, at peace, simply, tragically burying a child. What a incredible scene. They have to bury a child in the frozen earth. Those were pretty strong characters, I thought. Great characters.
As the film went on, it shows that not everybody's content. But something that everyone.
Yeah. Or the other brother.
Or the other brother who said, hey, I'm not going to.
I'm not going to work.
The film just shows that different dimensions of people in the world. It speaks a lot about character.
Character. Yeah. Yeah. But isn't it like what makes a great film is that you study character? You have the opportunity, you were talking about art and everything, you have the opportunity for short times to spend the time to see this, to really investigate and look at character. Not, and to be moved to want to look at character. Go, oh, I had never thought of it that way. Oh, what would I do? I don't think I would be as strong as some of them.
I feel I've developed this bond with my students over the term, and I feel a lot of a lot of anxiety, when is this ever going to end?
Because it's that time.
So I feel like I really need to put some of these people out of their misery.
Okay. I agree.
Is that okay with you? Okay.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you guys.
All right.
Nice meeting you.